Hi, everybody. Welcome back to BallotCon. My name is Alex Michelson. I'm from ABC7 Eyewitness News, one of our political reporters, and we are now going to talk about Proposition 54. For those of you who haven't read it, Proposition 54, the basic point is that it would create a 72-hour window where if Sacramento legislators want to pass something, they've got to post it online for 72 hours before that they can vote on it, so there can be some time for the public to see it, for there to be a discussion about it. It also requires that all meetings that are done in the legislature in Sacramento be videotaped and then posted online, and that they're archived there for 20 years. And my guest here will tell me if I left anything out. Unfortunately, our guy who is against it is, I guess, a no-show or lost. He may walk in here at some point. But I'm going to do my best, I guess, to push back a little bit with our guest here, who is Derek. Why don't you introduce yourself and why you're in favor of this?
Thanks, Alex. I am Derek Cressman. I'm a spokesperson with California Common Cause that is supporting Proposition 54, just because we believe in open and transparent and accountable government. And the idea, I think, behind Prop 54 is pretty straightforward and really expanding upon what's already in our state constitution and our legislative traditions, which is the basic idea that the legislature should meet in public. And they're already required to have their meetings in public, and anybody from LA can drive all the way to Sacramento and sit there and watch them in a committee or in a hearing. But we think in this day and age, you ought to be able to log on to the internet and do the same thing. And in fact, we already do this to a large extent, where floor sessions in both the Assembly and the Senate are available to watch on TV and the internet. And many of our committee hearings are available to watch, but not all of them. So that's the first step, is to say we're going to have all of the committee hearings both live streamed on the internet and archived, so if you want to watch it later, that's available. The second provision is sort of a citizen journalism idea, that not only there'll be the official cameras, just like we have here today, our official cameras broadcasting what we're doing and archiving it so you can watch this later, but also citizens could whip out their cell phones and videotape the proceedings themselves. And I think in a day and age where we're asking our police officers and public servants to wear body cams and be subject to that in their line of work, I think it's a reasonable expectation to have of our public officials in the legislature that what they're doing in a public setting as a public official is subject for anyone to videotape. And then the third provision of having open meetings is we should be able to know what they're doing with enough advance notice that we could actually read the bill and put in a call to our legislator to let them know what we think about it. So that's the requirement, that bills be in print for 72 hours before the final vote in each chamber of the legislature.
Some politicians might say sometimes you got to make the sausage, and making the sausage isn't so pretty, and there's value in being able to meet in private and hammer out a deal and work out a compromise, and everything always being politically correct in front of a camera doesn't always lead to the best outcomes. What do you say to that?
Sure, and there's plenty of room for that to still go on. You know, we have a 9-month legislative session. We have all sorts of deadlines throughout that process, where bills have to be filed by a certain date. They have to get out of their first committee at a certain date, through appropriations at a certain date. There can be all sorts of negotiations throughout that process, and even right up to the last minute, there can be negotiations hammered out in private. But then once we have a final product, show us the product of that negotiation. Show us the sausage for 72 hours. Let us look at it. Let us sniff it before we decide to buy it. That's all.
Yeah, find out if it's chicken, sausage, or apple, or whatever it is. So the another argument against it is, okay, well then that just gives special interests 72 hours to get involved and to try to kill it. And it gives them the time to try to take it down. What do you say?
It does. And that's the whole point, is to give anybody time to look at it and oppose it or support it. And it's a little frightening to me that some people who've been in the legislature for a very long time and worked as public servants are worried about this, because they are in essence saying legislators are so afraid of lobbyists that they can't look them in the eye for 72 hours and say, sorry, I'm not voting with you, I'm voting with my constituents. Jesse Unruh used to say, if you don't have the guts to take their money and vote against them in the morning, and he threw in some other things, you don't deserve to be in the legislature. Now, maybe money is much more powerful now than it used to be. I think the solution to that is to reduce the big money in politics, and that's a big part of Common Cause's agenda. But to say the solution is to let legislators pass things in secret so they can sneak them past the lobbyists also means they can sneak them past the voters. And I just don't think that's the right way to deal with that problem of lobbyist influence.
The opponents also argue that a billionaire is funding this almost entirely himself, a guy named Charles Munger Jr., and they say that he is just trying to influence elections by doing that.
Yeah, he is. And Charles Munger Jr. is also, the leading Republican donor in the state of California. I ran for Secretary of State as a Democrat. I don't like billionaires spending lots of money on politics, and I disagree with most things that Charles Munger thinks. But I'd like to think that there are a few ideas out there that even if a Republican supports them, I might think is good. And that's why we have nonpartisan organizations like Common Cause and the League of Women Voters supporting this. That's why every major newspaper in the state of California is saying yes on 54. But also Democrats, Controller Betty Yee, progressive champion, my personal hero, says yes on 54. Gavin Gun Control Newsom, Steve Wesley, former Los Angeles Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa all say yes on 54. So this is one of those few issues, and I wish that there were more, where I think both sides of the aisle can go, we'd all be better off if people had a chance to see what's going on in the legislature.
Do you have any more pet names for state leaders?
I'll work on them, and we can get those into the video archives later, since I believe that things should be archived for immortality. So yeah, Gavin can look that up, and we'll see if he likes it.
How's the campaign going? Where are you guys at in terms of polling? Where do you think this is a no-brainer kind of thing, or where is it at?
I do think this is a no-brainer kind of thing, which is a little bit challenging when there's 17 measures on the ballot and we're talking about this sort of boring common sense of idea of why don't we have meetings in public? The good news is that the public polling that's been out there shows a majority of Democrats, a majority of Republicans, a majority of independents already in support of this. And I think when people drill down and look in their voters' guide and look at the really broad bipartisan coalition supporting it, and just the common sense nature of let's do things in public, that we should prevail pretty strongly.
Anything else you want to add?
Well, I just say I do have a lot of respect for the handful of legislators and former legislative staffers that are concerned about that. People work very, very hard in our legislature trying to get things done. And I get that having 72 hours where people can see what you've done makes it a little bit harder for you to do your job. And so they're opposing it, fair enough. But I think the trade-off of if we've got to put a few speed bumps in the road of the legislature to knock down some barricades in the way of the voter being able to see what's going on is worth the trade-off. Democracy is not the most efficient form of government that's ever been invented, right? Winston Churchill said, in fact, it's the worst form of government except for all the other kinds. And so, yeah, this will make things, it's a little bit of a headache for the legislative insiders, but the trade-off is I think we'll make better public policy when we have input from everybody all across California through being able to watch what they're doing online and have enough time to read a bill and weigh in on it.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. I wish I could say the same for Stephen. You did not, but you did. It was nice speaking with you, and best of luck to you. Proposition 54, one of 17 different ballot measures you can all vote on, and thank you for the time, and look forward to more interesting discussions. Thank you for listening to me. That's all from me, but look forward to watching some more of your discussions and debates the rest of the day. Thank you so much.